So how I met Wana was seller sessions last year. She was working for a PPC company, and she came over for seller sessions live, and we built up a friendship. She's friends with my wife as well. What impresses me the most about her is her work rate is frightening, right? So I've always drummed it into her. Like I mentor Wana and a couple of other people do as well. She's very impressive, like technically on the knowledge from breaking down patents, knowledge of ranking, PPC. And she looks like she's just come out of nowhere, but she's been in the game almost a decade now. But yeah, when it comes to breaking down patents, application, testing, PPC, ranking, she's phenomenal. And when we've collaborated and co-authored articles, it's good because you may have heard on the podcast, etc. before, but iron sharpens iron. We're working together with Jeff Anderson, Anthony Lee, and we're developing tools that don't exist because a lot of stuff that we do on the cutting edge isn't available at the moment. And with the advent of AI, we can build out stuff pretty quickly. We haven't got beta, we haven't got rollout, we haven't got issues with, doing sprints and pulling back, because these tools are for us to use personally or for a small group. But we work together on a lot of projects, and a lot of her peers respect her as well. She gets a lot of support from the likes of Kevin King and John Durkitz. But most importantly, she works hard and she is all about her craft, and nothing gets in the way of that. And yet she's just pretty impressive. I kind of known Sim for a long time. I met him through seller sessions, but it was quite interesting because we didn't really speak a lot. It was always hello and hi and stuff like that. I'm normally running around with the events, but I think he's been to all but one or two, including like the Christmas parties. And I only really got to know him about a year and a half ago properly. In actual fact, it was Adam Heist that said, do you know Sim? I said, look, I always see him at the events and stuff. But we will say hello, but we've never really interacted and sat down and had proper chats, and it's been great since getting to know him, like super sharp. I mean, he does remind me of Ash Thompson, who was a 9-figure seller here. Very impressive, got oppressive operation, really knows his shit when it comes to images, stopping the scroll. And he's made that into an art form, working with his team and others as well. But very impressive, very unassuming, and very smart guy. And what he's built based in the UK and how it's been built has been very impressive. He hasn't always gone the same route as others. They've got their own warehouse space, etc. They do very little overseas, but it's because that's become a choice, but they are now moving into the US. So it's impressive, 11 brands, mainly UK based, doing 8 figures. Andre and Matt impressed me as well. What they've done with Product Opinion has been incredible. The speed at which they ship features, and the cost of using Product Opinion is pretty cheap when you compare it to other softwares in the space. They're great for feedback as well. And of course, Andre's an 8-figure seller. You've got Matt, also a 7-figure seller. He's been in the game. Matt, I think it's about 10 years. I think Andre started around 2017, exited his first brand. He has a lot going on, but both of those guys, when it comes to breaking down data, they lead the way with this. Obviously, there are other impressive people in the space, but what I like about them is they're taking something what most would maybe consider boring and break it down so it's simple for anyone to achieve. And one of the things we lack in this industry is enough testing. There's too much focus on proven strategies and looking for moonshots and hacks and stuff like that. And if you know anything about conversion optimization, you understand it's an iterative process and it's done over time. Jeff Anderson, I met him about 18 months ago. He came on the podcast, very much impressed me in what he does. He brought me in alongside Wana working on the new tool that we're dropping soon. I won't go into too much details now until there's a public launch, but the guy is very well respected. Not only did he exit his own brand, not only is he invested in the tea brand that he co-owns, not only that, he works with a lot of the software companies helping out with processes. He's one of the best when it comes to building out processes and breaking down complex information that is useful and measurable. So I'm really glad to have him on board for Seller Sessions Live. You can watch some of his podcasts as he breaks out the Miro board and breaks everything down. Very much so on the cutting edge. And he also has an agency that he's taken and helped 30 brands reach 8 figures. So he is the serial entrepreneur, especially within the Amazon space, that really knows how to scale and nail everything down, but do it in a way that it's gains comprehension for people. And this is why with the model that we're doing, it's important that the retention area of teaching is applicable here and getting delegates to understand with clarity. And it's not an easy task. A lot of people think, if you can piss, you can paint. Teaching is still a skill that you would have to learn. And so what I like about Jeff is his ability to not only do what he does, and he knows how to deliver it to gain comprehension. So why did we change the model? And why is it hard to copy the model? So I think the key thing is when you're working in collaboration with people, you're pretty much, especially at the level these guys operate, you're working in a 35 grand mastermind effectively. And the way we're building out the content, because it's built from the ground up in the meaning of how it all pieces together from launch to relaunch, and obviously avoiding the typical optimization stuff that's very important, but you don't want to go to a conference and someone's talking about the same stuff that you watch and see on social media or you consume. A lot of it is repetitive, but there's a lot more to it than that. And everyone wants to perfect their launch strategy and get better. So our focus is to work on majority of the advanced stuff, not dismissing anything to do with the standard stuff that you hear about, which is important, but you don't need it to be repeated. Now, with Sim, Andre, and Matt, of course, we do the Main Image Monthly together. It won't be that content from Main Image Monthly because that's a podcast. This is going to be more of the stuff that we are all doing behind the scenes. And then because it's a hive mind, we can select from the best to go what goes into the content and what flows well on the day. And you're able to retain that information. Me and Juan, as I've mentioned, probably you've seen on the pod, we work together on many things on a regular basis. I also do a lot of mentoring work with Juana as well, helping navigate this industry, which I love, but obviously it's like all industries, it has certain points which we'll just leave there. Also, Jeff, me, and Juana work with Anthony Lee. We're always developing tools. So when we look at the breakdown of the collaboration, Sim is close with the boys at Product Pinion. Same with me. Juana and I work together. Juana, I, and Jeff works together. So when you're trying to do something like this, it requires a lot of work involved, because why would this be hard to copy? Well, how many people that speak events would dedicate 5 months of work to build this up, to deliver on the day? Very few. So that part's hard to cover. Also, the weekend before the event, the guys will come to my home and then we're going to drill through all the details, because there's one thing you can say that you teach, but there's also delivery. The amount of times I've seen people deliver content. I'll give you an example. I used to work at the 2 most prestigious schools in London, Alchemia and Point Blank, for music production and audio engineering. And so what would happen is we'd have new guys start that might be world-class mix engineers and worked with really big names and pop stars and cool bands and stuff like that. So they had the skill, but they couldn't transfer it because they were sloppy. So what would happen is people that are paying thousands for these courses were complaining and asked to move to other classes. I've had to cover classes. Some of them come to mine because they didn't do the prep. They thought they could just turn up like the superheroes that they were, and they're very good at what they do. And everyone's sitting there and they're telling you all their war stories and dropping names and stuff like that. And then they'll run through a demo and they'll pick up a copy of Sound on Sound and sit there and say, right, get on with it. And basically they'll sit there, they'll lecture for an hour. You know, when we were lecturing in the classroom, you're on your feet 5 or 6 hours. You're writing on the whiteboard and everything is developed and meticulously planned because these people are paying money, good money, to be educated and walk away with retention. So teaching is about the delegate or the person in the classroom. It's not about your ego or someone else's ego or how much money you earn and what superstars you know, blah, 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 blah. That's all good, right? That gives it some credibility. Absolutely. But if you can't get that over and then you're sloppy and you don't know how to implement like course notes, lesson plans, pacing, you know, you can run through a demo in a minute or you can spread that demo and go in depth with that demo for an hour and a half, 2 hours. It sounds like a stretch, but when you think about all the components and then you think about the retention, this is why it's important with the VARC model, you know, visual, auditory, reading, kinesthetic is through doing. So one of the best things you can do when you're teaching something is you start with the end in mind. So let me give you an example. If I was demonstrating on how to mix down a dance track, I would play back the finished dance track. I would show all the compression settings and the levels that I was using, the automation that I'm using, the various different effects, auxiliaries and stuff. So I'll go through and I'll show that, and then I would then break it down. So you'd start with the kick drum, and then you bring in the bass, and then we'll look at stuff in and around EQing. And it's a process that you go through. And so that they can see you do it, and then you can follow that process. So they can lock that in and then start to develop out their own style. But it's important to understand with teaching is the number one part of teaching is, does everyone in the room walk away with comprehension? And there are people out there who know what they're doing and they're good at sales and marketing, but they're not good at that bit because it's a skill that they haven't developed. So let me give you a funny story of trying to get the model over. Even though we dropped maybe 15, 16 carousels, explaining it and breaking it down. So I thought it was quite important when we did the social at the very beginning, explain everything in detail. Sim was at a mastermind. He said, Dan, listen, I sat down with the UK guys and basically they think it's some sort of speed dating where you move around rooms. And like I started laughing, but it's so important to get your message right. But more important than that is to get your intel. But funny enough, while that was happening, I'd already brought in the guys that worked on Alex Hormozi's 100 million funnel. These guys basically reverse engineer and are funnel architects. So they rebuilt the landing page and the customer journey to checkout. So we've implemented that. So it has been interesting trying to get this model over because it's not an easy task to do when you change something so rapidly. And there's only so much you get on a landing page, but that's all taken care of now. But I thought it was quite funny that no matter what you did, this is why importance of feedback, right? So it's the same with sellers that ignore customer objections. Most of your problems go away if you know what your objections are by the customer and fix it. But the only way you're going to find that is to do proper feedback. It doesn't guarantee that you can fix it. But a lot of people fly blind because they'll look at post-purchase reviews, and which are fine, but they're other people's products. They're not yours. It doesn't tell you anything about your product. So a lot of conversion rate problems can be solved is, can I find the customer objections? And then do I have the ability to fix it? And That will be any hack, any magic trick. If someone's not buying your product and you're sitting at top of search because you're running ads and burning cash, you have a problem, right? You've got the visibility part of it, but if people are not buying, they're clicking but not buying, there's a problem. It's either going to be your hook, your message, or your offer. If you look at it from a funnel sense, if you dial it right back out, your hook are your images, and then your message is the content of your listing and your story, your keywords, etc. And then of course comes the offer, which is the most important, generally speaking, especially on Amazon, as it's a marketplace. So yeah, you have to nail the message, and the only way to get a message is to get feedback from the right kind of people. All right, that's enough for me. I'll be back here next week. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you soon.